Ragnar Lothbrok is the most famous name in Viking history, though separating the man from the myth is nearly impossible. Most historians believe he was either a composite figure built from multiple real chieftains or a single person buried under centuries of embellishment. What the sagas agree on is how he died. After launching a raid on Northumbria that went catastrophically wrong, Ragnar was captured by King Ella around 865 AD. The execution method was a snake pit. Ragnar thrown alive into a writhing mass of venomous serpents in a cold stone chamber. According to the Ragnarssona Thatter, he laughed. His dying words cursed Ella directly and prophesied that his sons would come for revenge. Whether any of it literally happened is beside the point. The story became the most retold death scene in all of Norse literature. The defiant warrior mocking his executioner with his final breath. Ivar the Boneless was one of the most feared Viking warlords of the 9th century, and his nickname alone was enough to unsettle anyone who heard it. The exact meaning remains debated. Historians have proposed it referred to extraordinary flexibility, a bone condition, or something else entirely. What is not debated is his effectiveness. Ivar was a driving force behind the great heathen army that invaded England in 865 AD. The campaign launched to avenge his father Ragnar Lothbrok's death in Ella's snake pit. The revenge was thorough. According to saga tradition, Ella was captured and subjected to the Blood Eagle, one of the most gruesome execution methods in Norse literature. Whether the Blood Eagle was real or literary invention remains contested, but the message was clear enough. Ivar went on to become a powerful ruler of Dublin, where Irish annals record him as a king of considerable influence who dominated both Norse and Irish politics in the region. His death, recorded around 873 AD, is strangely anticlimactic for a man of his reputation. He reportedly died of a sudden illness, not on a battlefield, not in a raid. The man who made kings scream died quietly of sickness. Bjorn Ironside pulled off one of the most audacious Viking operations in recorded history. He and his partner, Haystein, led a fleet deep into the Mediterranean around 859 to 861 AD, raiding Spain, North Africa, and Italy in a campaign that took longships further south than most Scandinavians had ever imagined. They famously sacked a city they believe was Rome. It was Luna. The mistake presumably stung, though the raiding continued regardless. The Mediterranean expedition remains one of the most remarkable feats of Viking Age navigation and logistics, and most historians consider it broadly credible even if the details have been embellished over centuries of retelling. After returning north, Bjorn reportedly ruled as King of Sweden, though the sources for this claim are thin and largely confined to Icelandic sagas with limited independent corroboration. His death, when it finally came, felt almost like a joke given the scale of his career. According to saga tradition, Bjorn Ironside died of old age. No battlefield, no ambush, no spectacular betrayal. The man who took longships to the Mediterranean and back simply got old and stopped. The Viking who sailed furthest died going nowhere. Egill Skallagrímsson is one of the most violent figures in all of saga literature. According to Egil's saga, he killed his first man at the age of 7 during a game that went wrong, and nobody who knew the family was particularly surprised. His father was difficult. His grandfather was worse. Egil fit the pattern and then exceeded it. Over the following decades, he fought across Norway and England, feuded with kings, and composed Old Norse poetry so admired that it is still studied 1,000 years later. He once saved his own life by composing a praise poem overnight for the man who was about to execute him. Eric Bloodaxe, the intended executioner, let him walk out the next morning. Egil was brilliant, brutal, and by all accounts impossible to live with. He survived everything the Viking world threw at him, which may have been the problem. By his final years, he was blind, deaf, and so difficult that his own household could barely tolerate him. Around 990 AD, he convinced 2 slaves to help him bury his silver hoard in a secret location. Then, he killed them both so the location would die with him. He died shortly afterward. Nobody ever found the silver. The Viking Age's greatest poet spent his last act making sure nobody else got paid. Gunnar Hámundarson is considered the greatest warrior in Icelandic saga literature. Njal's saga describes him as tall, strong, handsome, and capable of leaping his own height in full armor. He could fight with either hand, throw a spear faster than most men could follow, and he never lost a single combat. The saga also notes he was a genuinely decent person, which made what followed considerably worse. After a series of disputes that were mostly not his fault, an Icelandic court sentenced Gunnar to 3 years of exile. He accepted the ruling. He rode toward the coast with every intention of leaving. Then his horse stumbled, and he looked back at his farm, at the fields and the long slope of the hillside, and said he could not go. That decision killed him. His enemies surrounded the farmhouse and attacked. The gunner held them off alone with his bow until the string was cut or snapped. He turned to his wife Halgrdr and asked for a strand of her hair to restring it. She refused. Years earlier, he had slapped her during an argument. She had not forgotten. Gunnar was overwhelmed and killed. The finest warrior in Iceland died over a grudge about a slap. Olaf Tryggvason forced Christianity onto Norway the way he did most things, with total conviction and considerable violence. Before he reached the Norwegian throne, he had raided across England, fought in the Baltic, and built a personal reputation as one of the most effective warriors of his generation. He seized power around 995 AD and immediately set about destroying the old religion. Temples were torn down, sacred groves were burned, resistors were tortured, mutilated, or killed outright. Conversion was not a request. For 5 years he ruled Norway, and for 5 years nobody successfully told him no. Then came the Battle of Svolder, around 1000 AD. A coalition of Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian rebel forces caught Olaf's fleet in an ambush at sea. The exact location is still debated. Olaf fought from the deck of the Long Serpent, the largest warship in Scandinavia. When the ship was overwhelmed and his men were falling around him, Olaf did not surrender. According to Snorri Sturluson's Heimskringla, he leapt overboard in full armor and disappeared beneath the surface. His body was never recovered. Monks across northern Europe claim sightings of him for years afterward. Historians do not take the sighting seriously. The sea kept him. Sweyn Forkbeard spent the better part of 2 decades trying to take England, and when he finally succeeded, he had almost no time left. He had already overthrown his own father, Harald Bluetooth, in a revolt that drove the old king into exile and death somewhere in Pomerania. From Denmark, Sweyn launched raid after raid against the English coast, extracting enormous Danegeld payments that bled the Anglo-Saxon treasury dry and humiliated King Ethelred into increasingly desperate measures, including the mass killing of Danish settlers on St. Brice's Day in 1002, which only made things worse. By 1013, Sweyn was done extracting silver. He invaded with a full army. English resistance collapsed so completely that Ethelred fled to Normandy without a serious fight. Sweyn was declared King of England by Christmas. But he had achieved what generations of Viking warlords had attempted. He held the prize for 5 weeks. On February 3, 1014, Sweyn died at Gainsborough in Lincolnshire. The cause was almost certainly sudden illness, though the chronicler John of Worcester recorded a version in which the ghost of St. Edmund, a martyred Anglo-Saxon king, appeared and struck him down with a spear. Historians favor the illness. Ethelred came back. Sweyn's son Knut would need another 2 years to reconquer what his father had won and lost in a single winter. 5 weeks. The throne was still warm. Harald Hardrada is considered by many historians to be the last great Viking conqueror, and his death is often treated as the symbolic end of the Viking Age itself. Before he ever reached the Norwegian throne, he had already lived a career that would have filled several sagas on its own. As a teenager, he fled Norway after his half-brother Olaf Haraldsson was killed at the Battle of Stiklestad. He ended up in Constantinople, where he served as a Varangian guard for the Byzantine emperor, fighting across Russia, the Mediterranean, and North Africa, and accumulating enough wealth and reputation to return home and claim the Norwegian crown. He ruled for 20 years. Then, in 1066, he invaded England. His forces defeated the English at the Battle of Fulford Gate. And for a few days, it looked as if another Viking king might sit on the English throne. 5 days later, King Harold Godwinson force-marched his army north at extraordinary speed and hit the Vikings at Stamford Bridge on September 25th. Many of Hardrada's warriors were caught unprepared, reportedly without armor. Harald Hardrada was killed in the fighting. An arrow to the throat, according to saga tradition. His invasion fleet had arrived in roughly 300 ships. The survivors needed 24 to sail home. The Viking Age went with them. Freydís Eiríksdóttir was the daughter of Eric the Red and the half-sister of Leif Erikson. Depending on which saga you read, she was either one of the bravest or one of the most dangerous figures in the entire Vinland story. In the Eirik saga Rauda, she frightened off a group of hostile Skrælings by baring her breast and slapping a sword against it, a display so unexpected that the attackers turned and ran. In the Grenlandinga saga, the portrait is considerably darker. According to that account, Freydis traveled to Vinland with two Icelandic brothers on a joint expedition. A dispute arose. She accused the brothers of offenses and convinced her husband's men to kill the male settlers in their sleep. When the men refused to kill the women, Freydis took an axe and did it herself. She returned to Greenland afterward and was reportedly shunned by her brother Leif when the story came out. Her death is not recorded anywhere. No date, no cause, no location. The sources that could not agree on who she was could not be bothered to record when she died. Eric the Red's daughter simply stopped appearing. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.